Hey guys, I just wanted to do a quick review of the skull since we did that forever ago. Specifically, I wanted to go over the different processes of the skull, such as the zygomatic process of the temporal bone, the temporal process of the zygomatic bone, the frontal process of the maxilla, all of those, because the wording of them gets like mixed up a lot of times, and sometimes it's hard to remember different. So I'm hoping that I can give you guys a tip that helps you to be able to name them better. So I'm going to start by showing you this picture. This is the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. And so I like to think of the word process as like another word for border. So we're just saying that this is where the zygomatic bone is touching the temporal bone, and this is like the little border. And so the tip I like to use is, see this? So we're going to do the bone that you're touching and then process of the bone you're on. So basically you're going to name the white bone and then you're going to name the blue bone, and then you're just going to process of the between them. So in this example, it's the zygomatic bone is the white one. So zygomatic process of the temporal bone, because that's the blue one. So white bone, process, blue bone. And that works for when you go to the temporal process of the zygomatic bone. So temporal process, zygomatic bone. It works for the frontal bone. So there's the zygomatic process of the frontal bone, which is here. So zygomatic process of the frontal bone. You can see it here. Zygomatic process of the temporal bone. So white bone, process, blue bone. There's also one on the maxilla, I believe. Zygomatic process, maxilla. So yeah, that is my tip. White bone, process, blue bone. It's something that's really helped me just because it's really easy to flip the names around. Then the other thing that I wanted to give you guys a hint on is the zygomatic arch. The hint I have for this one is when they want the zygomatic arch, instead of one of the processes, they'll have both the zygomatic bone and the temporal bone in blue. So this is when they want the zygomatic arch. So I hope that helps with your processes. Then the other thing I wanted to do was just go through, let me think, where do I want to go? Anyways, I want to go through the front of the face. I'm trying to think of a good picture that will give me that. I guess this will give me good. Okay, so I just wanted to go through like this anterior view of the face, just because you can see a lot of bones in this view, and when you're going through these words on the side, it doesn't necessarily go from like top to bottom. It kind of goes alphabetically by bone, which I think is a lot more confusing than just going through it. So I'm going to go through it in the order that makes sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to you guys, I apologize. Sorry, let me find my pointer. Okay, so I wanted to start right here. So right here, this is our superior orbital margin, supraorbital margin. And so it's just like that top part of your eye. And then right next to it, you have your supraorbital foramen, that little indent. Sometimes it's just an indent on the pictures, I guess. And then you have your infraorbital margin, and it's the bottom border of your eye. And then in the pictures, it's kind of hard to see, but you have this like V-shaped thing that's right here. So this is your supraorbital fissure and your infraorbital fissure. So it's just like this V that goes right there. So your superior orbital fissure and your inferior one. And then you have your infraorbital foramen is right underneath the eye. So as you can see, it's like very symmetrical when you come to the eyes. If you have an inferior one, you will have it. If you have a superior one, you'll have an inferior one. Um, and then I guess that's really all I wanted to go over was just the eye and showing you that it is symmetrical, because sometimes it's really hard to get that when you just go through the vocabulary words. The other hint I wanted to give you was on the mandible. So on the skull itself, you have something called the mandibular fossa. And so it's just this like fossa at the bottom of your skull. And surprisingly enough, in your mandibular fossa, you have your mandible sits there. And so specifically your mandibular condyle, let me see if I know my alphabet, because I apparently don't, but your mandibular condyle is what sits right in that mandibular fossa. So I've had a lot of questions on how do you keep the mandibular condyle straight from the condylar process. Like sometimes it's hard to remember which one's on top and which one's on bottom. And my hint is really like your mandibular condyle goes in your mandibular fossa. So you have the two mandible words that go together. That helps some people. It confuses other people's. So if it doesn't help you, I really am sorry. That's all I got. But hopefully something in this video helped you guys. If there's anything that you want me to go over to help you guys review, I would be more than happy to do so. There are a lot of vocab words that go into this test, as well as knowing these words for the next unit is important, not because we'll quiz you on them, but because you'll need to know these for the muscle insertions and origins. So it really helps to get this down. So let me know if there's anything I can do, and good luck on the test.